second. Apologies. Always certain things that you can only do once you send the webinar live. All right. Okay, I think, sorry, I'm running the technical piece as well, so I just need to make sure everything is working as we hoped. All right, great. Okay. Good. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Kelly. I'm co-president of the Brookline Parents Organization. And along with my co-president, Lauren Bernard, and our esteemed moderator, Carrie Goldberg, I would like to welcome you to our townwide candidates forum this evening. Now, this forum is for town moderator and select board. There is a school committee race. We are not including school committee candidates in this because the BPO has endorsed in the school committee race, and we didn't feel we could provide an impartial forum platform in a race that we had endorsed in. We have not endorsed in the town moderator race or in the select board race, and we thought it would be really great to provide this this avenue, this venue for all of you to learn more about the candidates, because one thing that we've learned in our years of being involved in town politics is that the more we know, the better informed we can be. And these positions of town moderator and select board are very important for our town, as well as being important for our schools. Town moderator, I won't speak too much about it, but town moderator runs town meeting and appoints the advisory committee. And so as a direct relationship to schools, town moderator, the advisory committee has a subcommittee that specifically works on the schools and works on the school budget. So that has a direct relation to our schools. And the select board, while the school committee has a lot of independence from the select board has, together with the school committee, chosen 2 school committee members in the past 4.5 years. When seats were vacated and new people needed to be included. So that's a very important piece. We never know when school committee members are going to leave and need to be replaced. And also, the select board, has a lot to do with the finances of the town, specifically overrides. They have a lot of responsibility and power when it comes to overrides, which a lot of times we need to use to fund our schools. And also, just the issues of like the space between my house and my kid's school, like how does that space work? That's also under the purview of the select board. So all of these are reasons why we think that these races are really, these positions are really important to our schools. So thank you so much for coming. I'll leave it to Lauren now, who will continue the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. So we're very pleased you're all with us this evening, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed moderator, Carrie Goldberg. Many of you know her. Carrie has been a Brookline resident for 16 years. Her children went through PSB, beginning in kindergarten. She was a health and science reporter for WBUR. She's also been the reporter at the Boston Globe, a Moscow correspondent for the LA Times, and the Boston bureau chief of the New York Times. And very exciting, Carrie has a new job, and she is the new Boston bureau chief for Bloomberg News. So congratulations about that, Carrie.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
And without further ado, I want to just mention who the candidates are for moderator, who have joined us this evening, and we're grateful that you have. There is Scott Ananian, who is running for town moderator, as well as Kate Poverman. And we're very pleased that both of you could be here. Thank you for your time, and take it away, Carrie.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. So first of all, hey, everybody, and nice to see you. Thank you for coming. If you have questions, we've gotten a whole bunch of questions in advance, but if you have any during the session, you can post them in the Q&A, and Lauren and Ben will be passing them along to me. I'll do my best to keep up with them. You may certainly have some that arise as we're talking. So to the town moderator job, I was thinking, you know, it's quite a momentous moment. This is the first time in almost a generation that Brookline will have a new town meeting moderator. And so let's get to know them. I want to just let you guys know, Kate and Scott, that I'll go back and forth between you. Whoever went first one time will go first the next time. So let's start alphabetically. Scott, will be the same question to both of you. Scott, could you, in just 3 or 4 sentences, introduce yourself and what you're about and why you're running?
Sure. I'm Scott Ananian. I'm a parent of 2 school-age kids here over at Driscoll, and I'm running for town moderator to try to fulfill the vision that our town founders had for town meeting. It's a hugely democratic concept, right? That everyone who lives in the town is the legislative, the rulemaking body for our town to determine how our town works and how it runs. You know, it's fallen short of that for most of its history. For over 2/3 of the time, less than half of the town could actually participate. But that's the vision I'm trying to fully embrace and push forward. A real inclusive role for town meeting and for the moderator in allowing, in facilitating and empowering folks to get their ideas through town meeting.
Great, Scott. Thank you very much, Kate. There you go. Unmute, Kate. Yeah. Uh-oh.
There's sound in the background, which is why I put on my earbuds.
Okay.
Well, I've lived here for about 28 years. My husband and I raised 2 girls, Gabrielle and Rebecca, who went through the Brookline school system. Scott and I have a lot of the same goals for town moderator and for making town meeting a place that is more inclusive and civil than it has been lately, and making it, I guess, back to the town square where issues can really be discussed. It hasn't been that lately. And one of the reasons I want to run is to see if I can do my part in recreating that conversation, making things civil again. I'm experienced as a moderator at the Zoning Board of Appeals, so I've had a fair amount of experience in terms of presiding over contentious hearings. And I think that is one of the things which has prepared me well for this.
Thank you. Okay, Kate, you'll be first on this one. So for anyone who has never watched a Brookline town meeting, which is it can be quite a spectacle, how would you describe the role of the moderator? I was trying to think, is it more like the conductor of an orchestra or the president of the Senate? Or like, how would you paint that picture of what the moderator does in real time during town meeting?
Well, I don't know if conductor is exactly the right analogy, but head of the Senate is not, because the really important part about the moderator role is that the moderator remain neutral. The moderator has to be sort of the umpire between sides, but making sure that everyone gets a chance to speak, that everyone feels respected, that everyone feels welcome, and that there be no political agenda when putting forward the issues and making appointments to town meeting. So I think that the town moderator at this point can do a lot to cool things down, as I think Biden said, when things get heated at town meeting, and by making sure that everyone feels respected and heard, that will go a long way towards making things more welcoming there.
Thank you. Scott.
I'm going to go off the wall with a different analogy entirely. So I lead an annual competition at MIT with a huge number of people, almost more people than town meeting. And my son was asking me what it meant to lead that team. And because he's very young, he asked if it meant that I got to boss people around and tell them what to do. And I said, no, the role of the leader is not to make the decisions themselves, but to set things up so that we can all collectively make the decisions together. And of course, in a competitive team, there's a lot of trust and a lot of time pressure and a lot of like importance. And my team's won several times. But I think that's a fair analogy for town meeting as well. You're not making you're not making the decisions. You're setting things up so that we can all make the decisions together and really embrace the outcome of the process. Feel that it's fair. Feel that everyone had their fair say, and that that this is a healthy, functioning process.
What's the team? Just as a follow up, what actually?
It's a puzzle hunting team at MIT. Codex, very bookish.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Okay, Scott, back to you again. And then the other big part of the job is to appoint the advisory council, which is basically like the budget committee of the town, right? How would you either describe that role or say what you would do differently than what has been done?
Yeah. So I'll describe the role as the advisory. Let me fall back on so my professional experience is in computer software and collaborative software. I work on Wikipedia. I've worked for a lot of large educational ed tech projects as well. And in software, we have this dichotomy between the person who's writing the new feature, right, which is a feature engineer, and the build engineer whose job is to get that feature deployed in public without breaking things, right? And especially, I had a software that was on over 1 million kids' laptops in South America, and the consequence of breaking things for 1 million kids is pretty big, right? And so in my professional life, you sort of wear both those hats. You can, and sometimes I have within days, write the new feature, then take off that hat and figure out how to safely deploy that in production, right? What are the steps? Do I have to break it into pieces? Do I have to try parts of it first? Can I deploy it to certain things? How can we make this safe to do? And I view the advisory committee role in much the same way. We have everyone in town is empowered to write warrant articles and make changes to town laws. Town meeting gets to vote. The advisory committee is that sort of build engineer to say, these are the ideas. How do we do them safely? And how can we figure out, keep the balanced budget, keep the budget balanced? Are there ways that we can do trial parts of this? Do we need a referral committee to study this more in depth before we do it? And I think the important part there is that the role of the build engineer and the advisory committee is ultimately to help move the town forward, right? No one is rewarded if they just stop all progress in town, say no to everything. And sometimes we lose sight of that, and it becomes an adversarial process where the town, where the advisory committee is sort of digs in their heels, and then we lose the benefit of that back and forth, that compromise, and trying to figure out how to safely do this. Then we just deploy the thing the way it is sometimes, with all the risks that entails, and that's not the best outcome for the town.
Got it.
Yeah.
Great, Kate.
Okay, so talking about the advisory committee, there are a couple of aspects. One is, as Scott said, to analyze the issues, the warrants that are brought before town meeting by the citizens or by the select board, and analyze them in a deeper way than the town meeting members even can, or certainly the citizens, and to make recommendations on that. And those recommendations are very helpful for most people. One of the issues with advisory committee is that it has seemed to be somewhat static in terms of its members and the demographics of its membership. And I think one of the issues that needs to happen is that the moderator can do a better job of reaching out to different constituencies. If you only ask people like you who they'd recommend, you're only going to get people like you. But if you dig deeper into deeper pools where you don't know people, or there are different types of recommendations, and that can be to bridge the community on diversity to even to the parents' PTO, it's going to get you a deeper field of people than we're currently getting to apply for positions. One of the issues is that people don't even know when there are positions available. So that would be one way to reach out through the BPO or some other way to notify people about these positions and make sure that there is as diverse a voice as possible at advisory committee. And talented, it's a lot of work being on advisory committee.
Thank you. We've just gotten a question from the audience. Thank you, John. But I have one self-indulgent question. This is all of these questions are from the audience, from members, except for this one, which is mine. And that is, should any resident of Brookline be able to subscribe to the town meeting member listserv? And the reason I ask that is because I've never been a town meeting member. I can't be as a journalist, but I get the sense that a lot of the action that's going on in Brookline gets reflected in the town meeting member listserv, where town meeting members send messages to the entire group all the time. And I would love to get off of all of the Facebook groups of the town because they get kind of toxic. And so I would like to be able to subscribe to the listserv, but I also understand that there could be some issues with that. So Kate and then Scott, do you have a position on that?
Well, the irony is if you don't like the toxicity of Facebook, you're going to hate the listserv. It has become a forum for venom. It is very unproductive lately, and people have been very put off by the tone of it. But beyond that, the issue of whether or not to allow people to participate, even just on a read-only basis, it's really a hard one to judge. Yes, you want people to know what the issues are, but do you really want to see all the back and forth that town meeting members go through in terms of discussing an issue? How helpful would that be? You know, I'm all for freedom of information, access to everything, but sometimes the sausage is better made in the, you know, in the back room than right out front. So it's a hard issue.
It is. Scott.
So I'll note at the outset that it's not strictly speaking the moderator's purview. That's, you know, believe it or not, the Town Meeting Members Association is a sort of voluntary group of town meeting members, and the TMMA administers that listserv. So one answer to your question is, you know, you can create another listserv that serves certain roles better. I'll agree with Kate in saying that there are some details. I'm generally an openness and transparency person, and I think that a lot of what goes on in the TMA listserv should be open. Certainly, I'm committed as moderator to a lot greater degree of transparency related to warrant article specific things. So if there's a debate on a warrant article or an amendment which is proposed, or even scheduling hearings, that stuff should certainly be done in public. There's no reason for it not to be. On Wikipedia, we struggle with, we have a completely open forum. We find that especially minorities or folks who are perhaps outside the mainstream feel intimidated in participating in a completely open forum. And unfortunately, that's true even for the TMMA listserv, which is not open, but folks get intimidated. So yeah. I would be very interested in figuring out ways to provide safe spaces for certain types of discussions. But in general, I think there is a lot more transparency that should be done in terms of warrant article related activity in particular.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting, thank you. So we're getting in a bunch of questions on the Q&A, which makes me happy, except that we only have 10 minutes left. So I would ask you to keep your answers a little bit short. Here's a question from John Bassett. Sometimes past moderators have acted to move the process forward when it's clear a question has been decided. This could be encouraging, calling the question. It could be asking speakers to shorten and not repeat what others have said. It could be strictly enforcing time limits. The alternative can be letting everyone speak and needlessly prolonging the meeting. Do you see this as sometimes being part of the job? Scott, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, I will be short. I think that is one of the most sensitive and sort of delicate roles of the moderator, is to figure out how to ensure that everyone has their fair say. I will say that I view as a positive tendency of town meeting that when an issue is likely to be overwhelmingly in one direction, we try to make sure that the losing side has their fair say before the question is called, so that when the result is out, no one can say that the decision was made because town meeting didn't have all the information that they could. And I've certainly been on the losing side of articles that I felt at least, everyone had their best say, the best argument was put out there, and then the vote was there. So I think that is important in terms of bringing consensus.
Thank you. Kate.
I think when it is, as Scott says, an overwhelming, it looks like things are definitely going one way, that it might be more efficient to call the question. But as I think the moderator now is required to do, you have to make sure that people know who is left to talk on the right and on the left, or which side. One of the issues with that, which I have found when I've been talking with people, is that people are very timid. Some of them are intimidated to come up and speak at town meeting because we have strong personalities, we have regular characters who show up, and sometimes those are the people who are going to be at the back of the line. So that is definitely one of the disadvantages of cutting off argument, and it's something that has to be considered. One of the things I've wondered is if it makes sense when asking for people to say whether they want to talk, to say, are you a new town meeting member? Have you talked before? And try to draw out the people who might have the more timid voices.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's like teachers letting kids in class talk who haven't spoken before. Okay, these are going to be even faster answers. Kate, do you think advisory committee members should or must be town meeting members?
No, absolutely not. I mean,
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
We do, we need it takes a lot of talent, skill, and expertise on the advisory committee to get the answers and information you need. Town meeting members are not going to survive or provide a sufficient pool of people to do that.
Got it. Okay. Scott.
Same answer, slightly different reason. I think we know town meeting is not representative of the town as a whole, just looking at its demographics. So if you restrict advisory committee to just town meeting members, you're going to recapitulate that same lack of diversity.
Got it. Okay, next question. Thank you very much, Jen. Why do Brookline residents support you? What do your supporters say about you? How would they describe why they support your candidacy? Thank you. Scott, you first. Try to keep it to like 40 seconds.
I'll try. I'll be very quick. I've worked with a dozen or so folks writing their own warrant articles, and I've always been very generous with my time. They've viewed me as a source of valuable advice for taking their vague idea and figuring out how to turn it into a warrant article. And you'll see that my endorsers are a lot of those folks who I've helped in the past, and they know that I can do that, and they're excited about me being able to sort of step that up to a broader audience.
Thank you. Kate.
The job of the moderator is not to bring political articles forward. Yes, the moderator helps people, but the moderator has to be apolitical, not have an agenda. And one of the reasons my supporters support me is because they know that I have not been an advocate. Advocates are great, but they do not have a role in the moderator's seat.
Interesting. Great. Comment from J. Archer O'Reilly. Democracy has always thought the people should see the sausage made. Thank you. Okay, question from Ryan Black. How many warrant articles have each of the moderator candidates filed? Kate.
I have not filed any. I am not an advocate. I have talked with people about warrant articles, and I know the process. So as moderator, I can help people, but I am not an advocate and have not filed any.
Thank you. Scott.
I think I used this analogy before. I've been both a features engineer and a build engineer in turn. I've 18, it's hard to count, 18 warrant articles or motions. Sometimes it gets a little fuzzy.
Okay. Great. Okay. Anonymous. Last year, town meeting saw a couple of late-breaking budget amendment motions that some people decried as, quote, unvetted. How would you approach late-breaking amendments or motions as moderator? Scott.
Yeah, so I think that the basis of this question is perhaps a little misleading. The moderator isn't calling balls and strikes or trying to influence the debate here. So I don't think it's appropriate for the moderator to weigh in on specifics of whether a particular motion is ill-advised or not. I will say, certainly there are improvements to that process that could be made.
Thank you. Kate.
One of the changes that is important that's been made to the town meeting handbook is that now if there is a matter that affects the budget, it has to be presented 5 days in advance of the day it's going to be considered a town meeting. This will give people adequate time to consider the very complex issues that go into budget issues, especially ones that are contentious. And I think that's something that needs to be adhered to carefully so that town meeting members are not blindsided by getting these things at last minute that haven't been adequately explained to them. They may not be half baked, but are they clear?
Thank you. Okay, a couple more questions, but they're big ones. And I have to confess, I'm a recovering radio reporter, so I'm used to watching a clock count down by the second, and I'm actually told that we can have at least 5 more minutes, so that's great. It's like a lot of time in my world. So next question, what have you been doing to be ready to be moderator at May town meeting with the $360 million budget and 39 other articles coming up? Kate.
I've been reviewing all of the warrant articles that have been filed. I have been reviewing the correspondence that has been happening between Sandy as moderator and people who have questions, which Scott has been copied on. If I have questions about the law, I've looked them up myself. And I have been reading the very exciting tome, Town Meeting Time, which is a parliamentary guide for how to run town meeting in Massachusetts.
Great. Scott.
Yeah, so I've actually been talking to folks who are moderators in other towns, or who just remember, I talked to Joe Ross the other day, who remembers 3 Brookline moderators in his memory, and he says the best of all was Weiner, who is not a lawyer, but he felt he was the fairest and most reasonable of the town moderators. It's surprising sometimes how different other towns are, and so knowing the sort of breadth of possibility there it's been a little bit inspiring.
Great. This one is a little bit out of left field, but here we go. As town moderator, what is your opinion of Brookline becoming a city, and what organizational structure would you like to see, Scott?
Yeah, so this is interesting because this is one of the groups who I advised on their warrant article, which if they were successful and I were elected moderator, would put me out of a job potentially. But that's like I'm not an advocate in my advice here. So I gave them advice on how to turn that into a resolution and how they should pursue it. So again, I don't think it's not within the moderator's role to sort of opine one way or the other, but it is part of the moderator's role to be generous with advice and to help folks figure out if town meeting is the right venue for the thing they want to do. And that's what I've done.
Okay. Kate.
Town meeting is beloved by many of the town residents. I think it's one of the oldest we've had in Massachusetts, and there are very passionate feelings about it. That doesn't mean it is the best way to run a population of 70,000 people. I think there are times when town meeting is very clunky and inefficient, and there have been loggerheads reached, which partly because of our structure have not been able to be passed. If there were a mayor, which is probably what I would be leaning towards, the mayor could make a decision and be voted out if it was unpopular, but there would not be such a logjam. But it's a very complicated question and would have to fight with Brookline's long history of town meeting.
Yeah, great. Okay. I'm so happy there are a lot of questions coming in. I probably won't be able to get to all of them, and I apologize in advance. This is one that's certainly relevant to both. An anonymous attendee says, the moderator has shut down voices, including turning off their mics. Do you support silencing voices in this way, Kate?
No, absolutely not. I think that one of the things that has happened is that disrespectful things have happened, which in retrospect shouldn't have happened. Actually, thinking forward shouldn't have happened. If someone is going over time, then you have to tell the person you're going over the time. And if you continue to talk for 20 minutes, I'm going to cut your mic. But it's not going to be obviously as exaggerated as that. You have to give everybody a chance to speak, but you have to treat them with respect. Everyone has to be treated with respect, and that is something I am passionate about as moderator.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. So I haven't really talked very much about the role of technology in town meeting, but one of the things that I know from my professional experience is you can set up processes, and they're usually social processes. Technology can be a facilitator in such a way that you don't have to yell at people and you don't have to enforce rules, right? So, for example, a very simple technical thing here is as you're speaking at town meeting, everyone in the audience and you should see the clock of exactly how much time you have, and we will all know when you go over. And that eliminates the appearance and possibility of sort of unconscious bias, where someone who's well known might ramble on and get more time than someone who's not. Those rules need to be administered fairly, and it can be done in a way which eliminates the sort of possibility of bias from the equation.
Thank you. Okay, we have to wrap up. I'd like to give each of you a last word. So, Scott, a few final sentences to wrap it up.
What?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just continue with the theme I just started, which is I think my professional experience is in collaborative software, is in large projects run by volunteers, and our town is a volunteer organization, and innumerable hours are contributed by folks, both town meeting members as well as innumerable boards and commissions. And I've got that expertise on how you organize volunteers to do projects. You can't crack the whip on them because they're all volunteers. What you need to do is eliminate the barriers that prevent them from being effective. And our town has so much talent. I'm really excited about the ability to unlock that talent and allow more folks to contribute in a meaningful way to our town. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Kate.
As has come up in this discussion, town meeting has not always been civil lately. The online discussions have not always been civil. I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals, where we also have hearings that are not always pleasant or civil. And it is the role as someone who presides over those meetings to, again, calm the room. Sometimes it's a question of just explaining what the rules are and what the law is and why you are coming to a decision that may not be popular, which is helpful. But I think that being a lawyer, being somebody who has moderated over contentious hearings is something which is important for the role of moderator, and is something I bring to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you, and to people whose comments or questions I didn't get to. I'm really sorry. And there are a lot of forums or fora, whatever the correct plural is there, coming up in the coming days. And so there will be more chances to ask Kate and Scott things or comment about them. So to both of you, thank you very, very much for coming. And I wish
Thank
you both
you.
luck. And Lauren, Bernard, you want to take it back?
Yes, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Scott. Very enlightening, and thank you for your time. Now we're going to turn to the Moderators Race. In the Moderators Race, we have five candidates. We have 5 candidates for 2 open positions. And I'm just going to mention quickly who is going to be here with us tonight. It's everybody. We're pleased about that. First, the incumbents. We have Bernard Green, who is a candidate for re-election. We have Nancy Heller, who is a candidate for re-election. And then alphabetically, the challengers, so to speak, are Miriam Ashkenazi, Zoe Lynn, and Donnell O'Neill. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And just a quick comment. I'm not exactly sure how many people have tuned in, but the BPO has a Zoom limit of, I forget exactly how many, but if you tried to tune in and you were automatically forwarded to YouTube and you're watching this on YouTube, you won't be able to put questions in the chat. So if you want to ask a question, please email it to info@brooklineparents.org, and Ben and I will give the questions to Carrie. I just wanted to put out there. Those of you who tuned in earlier should be able to put questions in the chat. Okay, thank you so much. Take it away, Carrie, again.
Thank you, Lauren. So yeah, just a reminder that you can put your questions in the Q&A function, and I have a lot that have already come in, but I'll try to keep up with them as best I can. And as with the previous session, let's start by allowing each candidate to make a brief opening statement about who you are, why you're running, what you want to do, what we should know. I'll go in alphabetical order by last name. So Miriam Ashkenazi, could you please start?
Yes, it'd be great. Actually, I don't think my video is on.
Huh. Yeah.
Mine is the same. It won't allow me to on.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Hi. Hi.
And everybody, this is my dog, the official campaign dog. She's sitting on my desk with me. Thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you to the BPO for hosting this event. Oh, and now she's making an appearance. And I want to say, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for showing up, because the last thing we want to do on a Sunday, or frankly any day, is add another Zoom meeting to our list of things to do. And it's really important that we are engaged as a community. And so I really appreciate you spending your time to join us and to do that. And I really need to always give a shout out to my campaign team. I also really want to spend 5 seconds honoring all the other candidates who are running. Everyone has a clear commitment to public service, and I think that's really important to acknowledge. So thank you to the other select board candidates, the moderator, school committee, everybody, library trustee, everybody. So a little bit about myself. I'm a first-generation American. My father fled Nazi Austria and came to this country as a refugee. And this was a big part of my upbringing. The opportunity that this country provided my family really spurred my father into public service. And I learned from my parents the importance of working to make the world a better place for everyone actively. And this is really a core value for me. I've lived in Brookline 20 years. I've been a renter here, a condo owner here, and now I have a single family home. I'm a retired physician. I have a master's in public health, and I have a master's in public administration, because apparently I love to go to school. And I'm a town meeting member and a single parent of 2 kids of color in the Brookline Public School. I'm a CPAC parent, and I'm the PTO treasurer at Heath School. Whew. Okay, now, why? You're asking yourself, why is this crazy woman running for select board? She has so much on her plate. And and it is that active participation about making the world a better place that really strives and drives me. I'm running for select board because I think we need real change in Brookline. We need a government that reflects values, our values, with a clear lens on equity, good governance, and inclusivity. And I'm running to bring that kind of change. I want to help Brookline be more deliberate. What we need is a strategic plan with a clear vision for our town, with outlined priorities and a budget that aligns and reflects our priorities. We need transparency and accountability built into our structures, and a strategic plan helps us do that. Importantly, a strategic plan means we can create policies at the intersections of issues. And this is really vital. Climate change is an equity issue. Affordable housing centers around inclusivity, accountability for policing, and public safety are all at the core of good governance. All of these issues overlap and intersect, and we do right to recognize that, capitalize on it, and create a strategic plan with these overlays in mind. To that end, I believe a budget is a statement of our values and priorities, and we must have a vision, budget, and strategic plan that align to reflect our values as a community. My professional expertise is in building programs, working with scarce resources, and building consensus in culturally diverse environments. This, coupled with my experience as a town meeting member, a CPAC parent, a community member, and my love for Brookline, my expertise in operations and strategic thinking, makes me an ideal candidate for this position. And most importantly, at heart, I'm a pragmatic optimist. I think we can do it, but I'm going to be practical about it. So why should you vote for me? Do I have 10 more seconds?
Sure.
Okay. I have the skills to help Brookline develop and execute a strategic plan with a lens on equity, good governance, and inclusivity. I'm a progressive. I will vote progressive, champion, and support progressive politics. I'm passionate about Brookline, and I'm eager to work diligently to make this community the best we can be. Check out miriamforbrookline.com for all my issues, volunteer, donate, all the rest of the good stuff.
Great.
And vote on May 4th.
Super. Thank you very much. Next up, Bernard Green. I think that was about 3 minutes. So let's try to keep it to that, everybody. Bernard.
I'm going to just introduce myself instead of making a campaign speech. Bernard Green. I've lived in Brookline about 18 years. I have a wife and 2 children. They're grown now. My son went to Brookline High School, and we have enjoyed and really benefited from the type of community that Brookline is. I've spent 16 years as a public official here in Brookline, first as town meeting member, then advisory committee, and then finally on the select board, as well as seems like a zillion boards and commissions that deal with various town issues, from selection of town officials like the town administrator, the town council, the police chief, fire chief, as well as commissions or committees that have set up the Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Commission and other things. Let's see, I used to be a lawyer. I think that is something that is very relevant to being on a select board. I was a transactional lawyer, and I retired about 2 years ago. Thank goodness, because as chair of the select board, I don't see how I would have time to do anything else other than work for the town. I'd like to also thank everyone who's participating in this race, as well as participating in this forum. A democracy, particularly a town government type, or a town meeting type democracy, is only successful if everyone participates. Everyone doesn't have to be an official, but everyone needs to have their voice heard and have their ideas presented, so that we can figure out what is the best way of solving the very complex problems that we have, especially in Brookline. Nancy Heller used to be a member of the Brookline School Committee. I'll just add that many years ago, I was a member and ultimately the president of a school board in another state. So, we have, both of us have, some understanding of many of the issues I think members of this organization are concerned with as it relates to the schools. So that's a little introduction to me, and I look forward to all the questions that are coming in from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Heller, next up. Up, unmute. Uh-oh.
You'd think I learned that by now with all the Zoom meetings. So thank you, Carrie. Thank you to all the select board members. I'm Nancy Heller, for those of you who don't know me. I've been in Brookline since 1973. My husband and I moved here principally for the schools. We were contemplating starting a family, and we knew we wanted to move to a community with high quality schools, and Brookline was very, very highly thought of, as it has continued to be throughout many years. Before I came to Brookline in 1973, I brought with me, actually, my background from growing up in a highly segregated community. My parents were, actually, I'm a first generation person, because my mother was born in Russia and came here as a child. I don't often think about that, but it is the case. And I know that my family had a lot of issues around immigration and anti-Semitism, and one of the reasons they came here. But my parents were very, very progressive. And I'd like to say that progressivism is in my DNA, because as well as my care for education and for diversity of all kinds and with everyone, my parents were very, very strong supporters of many different causes. And my mother was a full-time worker. She was a scientific researcher. And so she was very concerned about the ERA, for instance. And I think that a lot of those views have colored my thinking, and I have brought those forward as best as I can. When I first came to Brookline, I was very involved in civic life here, not only in our neighborhood association, the North Brookline Neighborhood Association, but also through the schools, through at first daycare, then after school and PTO, and many issues that permeated the schools at that time. I also was very involved in what was then called the Understanding Handicaps program, now called Understanding Disabilities. It still exists today. I think it's a very valuable program, and it teaches children empathy for those who are different and have a different way of maneuvering or walking around or living their lives. My father was actually paraplegic, and I got my interest, I think, from my really significant interest in this subject from growing up with him. I mean, he was basically paraplegic from when I can remember, before I had any memories at all. So I, where was I? Oh, I ran for school committee in 1989 because of my interest in the disabilities issue, principally. But also, I've never been really a one-issue person, and I've always been concerned about many different issues. And I ran for the school committee in 1989 and served on that body for 12 years. During that time, I think I actually was the co-chair of the first BHS renovation project, and happened in the late 90s. But we had many, many issues that we discussed and talked about. I was also in town meeting at all of those times, so town meeting from 1988. Then I went on the advisory committee for a number of years, and in 2015 decided to run for the select board. And the reason that I wanted to run for the select board is to continue my work in moving projects forward and moving issues forward, issues that I care about. And when I came on the select board, I realized that we actually end up, if you will, specializing, because there are a number of 5 of us, and not everyone can do the same thing or be chair of the same committee. And so I was also, before I became a select board member, I was very interested in climate issues, as were my parents actually. And I filed the first warrant article on banning polystyrene in 2012. So I immediately wanted to be the co-chair of climate action, and I was granted that. I'll just say one more thing about it. I also, because of my prior experience, I think, with running the high school project, I've done that again. And the high school project is really going to be a signature project for the town. So there's a lot more to say, but I'll wait till the questions come. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And just to read one comment that came in, FYI, understanding our differences was cut in the budget crisis last year. The only education PSB students received about disabilities in 12 years of public education was 4 hours from that program, and now it's gone. Okay.
Well, I hope it will come back. I hope we will be able to figure out a way.
Thank you. Great. Next up, Zoe Lynn. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name's Zoe. There's a lot of people here I know, and I'm so glad to see you, and a lot of people I don't know, and looking forward to meeting you. I'm a Brookline resident. I live over on Tappan Street. I rent over here, and I'm running for one of the 2 select board seats on the May 4th ballot. My professional training is cross-disciplinary in scope in public administration, management, and in environmental and social sciences. I received my master's from the University of Michigan with a quadruple major in areas of environmental policy and justice, with a particular focus on climate mitigation, community-based planning, engagement, and change management. Summarizing. You may know my previous work, in sustainability and climate leadership for the town. I currently work, now I currently work as Assistant Director of Business Strategy and Operations for Biotech in the Boston Metro. Collectively, I describe my skills as an area of leadership expertise called in wicked challenges. And I'm going to talk about that because I think it's really relevant to some of the big complexities we're facing right now. And because I'm not from New England, I always have to say this, not wicked, like you're describing, probably thinking. I love that they have 2 meanings. Wicked is a term, an academic term to describe leadership management term to describe very complex challenges. You can Google it. Ones that cross geopolitical boundaries, ones that are interrelated, tend to be very emotional, painful, overwhelming. These types of challenges are often controversial because how we move forward and how we address them isn't always a clear or a single path forward. And let's give a few examples just to get everyone in the right space. Climate change is a wicked challenge, poverty, our federal debt, the large plastic garbage patch in the ocean, COVID, terrorism, racism. These are examples that meet the wicked challenge definition. Their scale, their institutionalized inertia means we cannot manage wicked challenges with normal leadership and policy tools. And we've learned that over time that they have to be tackled a different way. To bring this home, to bring back to Brookline for a moment, we were global there for a moment. We're part of a regional.
Should I be elected as a town meeting member, but in particular?
There you go. Sorry, Zoe, keep going.
Thank you. We're part of a regional housing crisis, and we're not meeting our affordable housing needs. This is a wicked challenge. We're part of a global climate crisis. This is very much a wicked challenge. And we continue to confront painful issues around racism, another wicked challenge. Connected to our ability to effectively address these challenges is the fact that we face growing demands on our town finances and staff resources. And we have a structural deficit. We have a gap between our revenue, projected revenue and projected expenses. And I think my fifth big challenge that we face is we have places where we could do a much better job of caring for others, for our most vulnerable, for our seniors, for people with disabilities. And that has been really inclusive of all Brookliners. This wickedness of those, at least the first three that very much meet that definition, they require, what we've learned over time is they require very strategic, inclusive, and very collaborative leadership. This is a type of leadership that I would bring to the board. This is my area of training. This leadership that I'm talking about and I'm trying to describe real briefly here focuses on facilitating community brainstorming and input up front, and then moves it through a series of processes followed by coordinated executive action. This works on really challenging issues when there's a diversity of stakeholders, and really important is key because it works within our town meeting form of government, a very decentralized form of government. To make this all work and to really start tackling these really big issues, we need to leverage Brookline's talent, its energy, its commitment to make meaningful progress, to take meaningful steps. I've worked with many of you, for those that know me, you saw, and for those that don't, maybe you've heard, we tested this form of leadership. We saw that it worked within our government. We demonstrated it, and we ran it through a pilot with this climate strategy I led in 2019. My leadership skills, my training in facilitating stakeholder groups with very diverse and opposing opinions in the public sector, my cross-departmental and cross-committee work for the town, and my understanding of the human and staff side of town hall, a very deep understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. These skills, this knowledge, this is some of what I would bring to the board. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I look forward to working with everyone. And my website is votezoeforbrookline.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And last but not least, Donnell O'Neill. I'm sorry.
Good evening. Thank you for having this forum for us. And peace be with all of you. Peace with all of you. So my name is Donnell O'Neill, Senior, town meeting member from Precinct 4, serving my third term. I am a father of two, a 16-year-old who's a sophomore at BHS, and also a 6-year-old who's in the RISE program at the Heath School. I grew up here. I went to public schools here. I also worked for the Brookline DPW for the highway and sanitation division. I'm currently a certified nurse assistant for Spalding Rehab Hospital on the pulmonary unit. I deal with ventilators and trachs and helping people breathe before they get to rehab and ready for rehab is what I do by day. What I bring to the select board, when elected May 4th, and please vote for me May 4th, is the unique lived experience that I do have here. I would be the only select board member who actually is from this town, went to school here, served on the town meeting, served on a AC, invested in this town from birth. I feel the issue that we're having, and that I've seen over the years, and why I'm running, is there hasn't been any real accountability. Our executive branch, they're not using their executive powers, and when it comes to we the people and really helping we the people, instead of helping people breathe, they've been choking the air out of everything and not allowing people to even speak. And I promise to keep our promises when elected May 4th to our residents in this town. Everyone's life matters. We're all volunteers here, and if I wouldn't have volunteered all these years if I didn't feel there was a purpose for it. I feel like I bring balance to that select board. I'm going to leave it at that because I know this is going to be a long forum. And questions need to be answered. My phone number is 857-243-3602. Once again, it's 857-243-3602. The website is DonnellO'neill.com. Please feel free to call me at any time. And thank you again for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Donnell. Okay, so we have many questions coming in, and we have quite a few that we got actually before we even started. I'll ask everybody, just because there are so many of us, to try to keep your answers pretty brief, because everyone will have a chance to answer each question. This first one, I apologize, it's kind of long, but it was the first question that came in, and I think it's very important. It's close to my own heart. So here it goes. Over the past year, it's about toxicity in the political atmosphere in Brookline right now. So here it goes. Over the past year, a member of the select board was threatened for his role in the Reimagining Policing Task Force. Adult cyberbullying on social media sites has grown so intense, entire moderator boards have stepped down en masse, and contested races for town office have gotten nasty and personal. We're on our 4th superintendent in 4 years. The police chief resigned, and the caustic animosity between our teachers union, parents, and administration made the national news twice. If elected, what would you do to ensure that dissenting voices, all of them from all sides of the political spectrum, are treated with respect? And I just want to say I've experienced that myself on Brookline social media. There was an anonymous complaint to my employer when people didn't like some questions that I was asking on the town Facebook page. I think the low point for me was when I used the term advanced students and someone compared me to Hitler. And I was like, this is just like, it's very much over the top. And I want to just finish the end of this question, which is from Connie Clausen. Thank you very much. The end of it goes, we say we want people with professional expertise to be involved in the town and schools, but then slam them when they are. We say we want diverse voices, but really mean only when they agree with us. So what would you do about this? I want to start, Donnell, you had to go last time, so please go first this time. And do try to keep these brief, everybody, because we have a lot to get through.
No, thank you. That is the question that was asked is one of the main reasons why I'm actually running. It's been disgusting, just all the way around. I don't know how else to say it. It's been disgusting. So far, and it's bled through our whole government. I mean, and I understand why people want us to be a city. So most recently, a lot of people were the mic was getting cut off at the public comment hearings at the select board meeting. Okay, it was happening too frequently. We put ourselves in a situation to get critiqued, and we're supposed to be able to handle it. That's why we signed up for this, And when the microphones are getting cut off and people are not allowed to speak, white and black, like there was no remorse. I felt a need to change that. So I requested for the select board during their public comment sessions to change it up a little bit, and especially in their policy, to allow the vice chair, since we have one now, we never had one before, but since we have one, to actually take the lead in the public comment and have some more influence on the meeting. And before cutting off the mic, to speak to folks before they cut off the mic. And I feel, since they've actually implemented that and been doing so 9 times out of 10, it's been a better environment, and people have been heard. I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
I think this is a great question. Thanks for asking it. I think it's a really critical issue. I think it relates to a lot of factors going on that we need to really tackle. It's why one of my 5 issues ended up being about care and how we treat each other. I think it is one of the issues that we're facing. It is one of the reasons I decided to run and jumping into this very serious commitment, because there's a lot to do here. My background is in consensus building on tough issues, and I would use those skills to really help navigate this space. I think we have some opportunity to open things up with engagement up front. I think that will help. I think we can build a new culture. I think the select board's uniquely positioned to help facilitate that building of a new culture because they're visible. They oversee our town hall. Some of that toxicity is in town hall, I believe. And yeah, I don't have a real long answer. This is what I do professionally, and I look forward to doing it. I think it's one of our issues that we really need to tackle. And I appreciate that people have brought it up.
Thanks. Nancy.
I've been concerned about this issue for quite some time. And I noticed that there was a real difference after our former president, who shall remain nameless, came to the fore and used his tactics, bullying, name calling, and somehow, even though I don't think people adopted his policies, they adopted his way of acting. And I saw it increase over the time that he was in office. And I can say that before that time, there was much less incivility, much less disrespect in our governmental processes. Certainly in the school committee, in the advisory committee, and when I attended select board meetings as well. I think part of it is that we had become used to a cordial environment and we weren't prepared to deal with it. And I think we need to be very clear about the rules, not only in the select board, but at the advisory committee, at the school committee, but also on social media. And social media, I think, is one of the more toxic avenues, and people just allow their rage to go forward and without any filters. And part of the problem is that we have companies, social media companies. I mean, look how long it took them to cut off the Twitter account of Donald Trump. And Zuckerberg, I was very, very, very upset at his statement that he was not going to cut off hate speech. But I think he's somewhat come around to a different mode. But we cannot allow this kind of speech to go forward in a public forum. I mean, that's the part of the problem. So I think part of it is we need to make sure the rules are clear. We obviously want to work toward consensus. We obviously want to work with one another, and we want people to be civil and respectful, and we want to treat them with civility and respect. And I think that that's been our challenge. That's a challenge to get across the idea that we don't want to be like Donald Trump. We don't want to have that kind of persona.
Thank you. Bernard.
Okay. One of the problems we have here in Brookline is that we have a lot of very, very smart people go to fancy schools and are professors and lecturers and whatever. And sometimes when people are really, really smart, they think they know it all. And that's one of the problems we have here in Brookline. The toxicity, you mentioned that you were called Hitler. I was called a Ku Klux Klanner in a public meeting. Yes, it's really, really out of control. And social media is a problem. But I think it's important for people to realize that social media is not the entire town. And, social media is a small little window into a certain part of the town, and the rest of the town, just like the rest of our society, basically ignores it. Unfortunately, because it has a loud megaphone, its actual influence is exaggerated, is much greater than it really is, or it seems to be much greater than it really is. I just stay off of social media. I urge other people to also, but we can't discount the fact that it's out there and it's really causing a lot of problems in our society. And one of the problems is that everyone thinks that their ideas, their positions are the only positions that are valid and acceptable. If you don't agree, it's like, the party line. If you don't agree with the party line, then you're some type of bad person. We see that in Brookline, and it reflects, what's going on across this country, not just in the South, not just in the sort of backwards rural areas of the country, but right here in urban America. It's a huge problem. And yes, Trump is part of it. But this preceded or predated Trump. My attitude is that, I don't know it all, okay? I admit I don't know it all. So therefore, I'm willing to listen to those who may know a little more than me. Maybe they'll convince me, or maybe they'll just give me an ability to be more persuasive in my articulation of what I believe. But in any event, you can't, we talk a lot about science in Brookline. The scientific method is being skeptical of what you know and looking for, a better answer. Maybe your answer is right, and there is no need to find anything better. But the process of being skeptical and looking for an improvement in your knowledge is what's really key. What would I do? I would do what I'm trying to do right now, and that is just sit back and take it. You watch the select board. I try to be as calm and passive as possible while people are sometimes, and not very often, but sometimes just yelling and screaming and being very, very mean and nasty. I think leaders have to basically be willing to take the abuse up to a point, of course, and try to keep the discussion on a clear, logical, and respectful level. Leadership and always has been something where people think that they can throw stones at you, and we sometimes just have to duck and weave and keep on doing what we have to do, because what we're doing is very, very important. And some of the stones that are thrown at us don't really appreciate or understand the complexity, the difficulty of being in a position of leadership in a town. It's just a town, but we're 60,000 people, very highly educated, right here in the middle of an incredible metropolis of Boston. People don't realize that it's really difficult. So what I would do is what I'm trying to do already, and that is just take it and push on and do the work we have to do.
Thank you. Miriam.
So first, I just want to say we're talking about civility, and I'm having a little panic attack because my kids are on the other side of that door fighting, and I'm afraid they're going to come through at any minute. So if after I'm done answering this question, you see me turn off my video, I will be back, I promise.
Okay.
It's very fitting. So actually, what I think it's a great question. I think it's a very important point, and I thought I would talk about a very specific example, which is actually the tension that's happening between the teachers union, the teachers, the parents, and the school committee. That the tension around, in fact, why I think my kids are fighting, which is tomorrow middle school goes back full time, and there's a lot of stress with transition. For me, I think this is a perfect example of how you have groups of people who all have the same North Star, right? all of them, the parents, the teachers, the school committee, the select board, everybody's North Star is getting our kids the best education they can and serving their needs. And when you have fear and panic, and when you have uncertainty, which we have had in abundance the last 13 months, it is very hard to keep in mind that is a shared value that you all have. And so I think one of the ways that we frame these issues is we all have to really actively listen. And I think we have to really respect other people's lived experiences, even if we don't understand them. And I think we dropped the ball really as a town in terms of sitting and listening. And you don't have to agree, but you really should listen with intent and say, okay, I hear you. And here's where we agree and we overlap. And here's where we need to find some solution or some consensus. And actually this comes from 2 decades in the humanitarian response sector. You have to really actively listen because you think you know and you don't know. And I'll actually point to Bernard's point. I think that's absolutely right. It's really important to understand what you don't know and to listen to people who are experiencing something. And it's very hard to bring people together if you are all only reflecting on your own wants and desires. And when you say, wait a minute, we all actually agree on this, right? We all believe the same thing. So how do we move that ball forward? And I think that's really an important way to think about problem solving. Find something you agree on and start from there and then work backwards. I don't think the abuse is okay. I do think it's really problematic. I read the comments. I don't comment myself. If I ever feel compelled to comment, I just slap my wrist.
I have to learn to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are heading, parents in the audience, we are heading towards schools questions, but a couple of questions have come in the Q&A that are so interesting and I think important and meaty that I want to ask the candidates. Again, I am begging you to be brief because there's 5 of you and there are a lot of questions. So this one is from Scott Gladstone. Do you think it's better to attack the affordability challenge, which I think everybody knows what we're talking about? The condos and houses are ridiculously expensive in Brookline. The affordability challenge through regulation of private development, investing public funds in public or public-private affordable projects, or allowing increased density throughout town in the hopes that the free market will reduce prices to a level that meets affordability standards. So I think I would sum this up as, what are we gonna do about prices in Brookline? And let me start in the middle this time. So Zoe, how about, can you take that one first?
Yeah, okay, I think this is really important. Thanks, Scott. So, okay, this is a wicked challenge and you're gonna hear me say it a lot and I don't say it like a Bostonian, so you can train me later. The science tells us if we start prescribing now on a very complex issue where we need to have instead neighborhood-based solutions, community-based planning, and we need to work with regional partners, we're gonna end down a path with no solution. It doesn't work for us to tackle these types of complex interrelated issues in our neighborhood with diverse views, diverse needs, different spaces have different needs and opportunities for growth, with statements like we should work this one way to solve this very big problem. So the way I would approach it, we would have, this is a space where it is very messy right now. We have folks on this side, we have folks on this side, and we have no plan, no holistic plan where we're working together on this, where we have pulled in stakeholders, we've pulled in our committees, we've pulled in staff, and we're dialoguing on how we're going to tackle a very complex and important issue. Affordability of a home is a pretty important issue. So we start up front, really robust community dialogue and brainstorming. What are our options? What neighborhoods are we talking about? Where do we have space right now where people are willing to move? And where do we have public support for that? What are some creative solutions we haven't talked about? And what are we even trying to achieve? Are we trying to just achieve housing? I would say no. I think we're trying to achieve affordable housing and economic development in line with our regulations, our zoning. And we want to do that strategically, not piece here, piece here, piece here. So move that along with real robust conversations, and then start troubleshooting in pieces. Maybe we pilot one program that came out of that dialogue, and we implement another, and we see how those goes. And we have regular check-ins, because we cannot do this with a magic wand. This is a series of conversations and actions where we test and retest and work with partners and build partnerships. And I'm talking regional partnerships. We're not a bubble, and we can't do these really big challenges alone. I would tie it to affordable housing, or excuse me, economic development, and our structural deficit too.
Great, got it. Thank you. Donnell, can you take that one?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So, well, first of all, I would fix what's broken now before we even look on expanding. And you know, our Brookline Housing Authority BHA units, you know, we have residents there patching their own mouse holes over and over and over again. So you know, no, first I would fix you know, what we can fix now. I am so thankful to have Tommy and others at the State House who really pushed for that eco bill. Tommy's awesome. But so that's one thing. And the other is to expand the rent to own, you know, the matching that some, you know, Brookline, I don't know if Brookline Housing does it anymore, but some units over here in Village Way will be rent to own. So your rent matches to home ownership. That's one way to get the renters out into home owning. And you know, so I'll leave it those two. I know we have a lot.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
right.
Miriam.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. Thank you, Scott. I'm going to keep my answer very brief, which is free markets are not free. The private sector has failed us in this already. The answer is in front of us. The private market has not done well in affordable housing. That's why we don't have affordable housing in Brookline. And when we talk about affordable housing, mostly we're talking about not even low income housing, we're talking about moderate income housing. So the answer is yes, we need public intervention and we need regulation. And I actually think we need a broader lens on how we think about that intervention. And I am going to turn my screen off for a second. I'm sorry.
Go deal. Yes, Nancy.
You know, I agree with Scott. It's a very difficult problem. It's a problem that exists on the entire country, really. And the structure of private home ownership and the idea that you build equity and you build capital gain. I agree with Miriam. We can't leave it up to developers. What we're going to end up with is a town of very, very rich people and not much middle class and not much affordable housing. And I would not want that model at all. I do think that both Bernard and I have been on the board pushing for some affordable housing that meets the definition of workforce housing. Because many of our employees in the town or of fairly moderate incomes can't afford to live here. And I think we want to encourage that kind of thing in our package of housing that's affordable. We also, you know, I don't have a problem with public-private partnerships as long as they stay out of the building luxury housing model and stick to what we really need, which is affordable housing for many different people, seniors and families and workforce, et cetera.
Thank you, Bernard.
Okay, this is a very, very complicated question. A lot of things going on in it, and I'm going to try to answer it from one point of view, or from you know, what I see as important here. Yeah, we do a lot of affordable housing here in Brookline. Both senior housing as well as for low-income people. Not enough, but a lot still. A lot of it is 40B, which is very problematic from many standpoints. For example, a 40B development has to be financially feasible. That means that the affordable housing that's provided in the project is going to jack up the rents for the market rate housing, And those high rents put pressure on the community that it's in. And that's very, very, very bad. I want to also note that, when we think of affordability of the town, we sort of sometimes forget that 50% or more of our residents are renters. And many of those rental units are not really affordable, but are accessible by many middle-class individuals. And building up the middle class in Brookline, as in any community, is critical. It is not sustainable if you have a community of a lot of poor people and a lot of rich people. That won't last very long in any stable way. My focus, sometimes we think of affordable housing as sort of a proxy for racial integration. I think that's an important piece of it, and that's one of the things we really have to focus on. I mean, it's not an accident that Brookline, according to the 2010 census, has a Black population of 2.7%. That's an historical fact. It is caused by historical forces, and we have an obligation to do something about that. What can we do? There's no easy, simple way of doing it. But one thing we have to do, and I'm going to tie this into our last question, and that is, how do we attract Black middle-class families into Brookline? Why wouldn't they want to live here? We have the Green Line into downtown, and we have the 66 bus from Nubian Square to Harvard Square. Perfect location. What's holding us back? Well, we don't market ourselves as much as we should, and I'm trying to do something to fix that. But also, we have a toxic atmosphere in Brookline that really makes it very difficult for Black families to want to move to Brookline. I mean, the sort of self-hatred of many people in this town is very, very bad. It really discourages or dissuades people from wanting to move to Brookline. And it is, when someone in Brookline says Brookline is a racist community, the message that a Black person hears is, I don't want you. And we have to realize that how we talk about our own town, it really has an impact on how the outside world sees us and whether they want to be involved as a resident here in Brookline, despite our efforts to try to increase the racial diversity. And I talk about racial diversity in terms of Black families, because that is the historical reality, that it was Black families who were intentionally prevented from moving into the suburbs, and we've got to address that problem and do what we can to fix it. So.
Thank you. There's an anonymous question, it's kind of a follow-up for Nancy and Bernard. You've been on the board for nearly 6 years. Why haven't you been able to get more affordable housing built? And sorry, I know it's so complex, but what's the shortest answer you can do?
Well, we have gotten a lot of affordable housing built. Yes, I mean, we are stuck in a market situation or a market environment, which makes it very difficult to do all we want to do. But within that environment, we have done a lot to increase affordable housing here in Brookline. And we can and we are doing more. So,
Nancy, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Bernard. We have done. I mean, we are when we started, our level of affordable housing for the state housing index was much less than 10%. Now we're at the 10% mark. So we have gotten better. We have increased affordable housing. We've been very fortunate that we've had some excellent nonprofits who have worked in this town. To Life has built a beautiful senior affordable housing building. We have Hebrew Senior Life, which is embarking on another project on Center Street, which will be 100% affordable. So we have increased it. I agree, it's a slow process. We've also invested in the Housing Authority and renovated and increased the number of, it will increase the number of units there. Egmont Street is done while we've been on the board. And that's a vast improvement over what it was. So we have done we have done within the limitations. We have worked to get more housing. If only we could move at a rapid clip, it would be fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add one thing to what Nancy said, and that is we've done something really, really creative, really innovative, and that is the Kent Street housing development, 100% affordable over a town-owned parking lot. That is, something new for Brookline. I think new, throughout the country. But yes, one way in which we used our brains to figure out, ways around the problems that the market creates for us.
Great, thank you. So I want to apologize to this audience full of parents. We have about 20 minutes left and we're just now getting to the school questions, the questions that are most relevant for schools. These are a couple of questions that came in. One is, the pandemic response required that my children become more independent out and about in Brookline. What will you do to ensure that they can maintain that independence safely even after the pandemic recedes? So, making the town walkable, safer, bikeable, just a place where children can roam. Miriam, do you want to start with that?
So I have a 14-year-old who likes nothing more than to be out and about and away from me. So I hear that. One of the things I think we did really well in terms of pandemic response was widening the sidewalks and making more space for safe foot traffic and bike traffic, and protecting biking lanes. And that's something I'd really like to see continue, especially next year. My son's going to be biking to the high school. So that's something that's really very present in my mind. One of the things that's been very nice is seeing my son hop on the T and head downtown with masks. And I would, I really think that this is a wonderful value of public transportation, is that I don't have to drive him everywhere. And so I think one of the things we also need to really think about in general in Brookline is there are parts of Brookline that are really not accessible by public transportation. And that's something that should be high on our list of concerns, because that's an equity issue as well. So I love this idea. I would absolutely encourage it. I see my daughter, eventually doing the same thing. And so I think it is something we can really leverage. We know we can do it. We need to continue to do it.
Great, Donnell.
Thank you. That's a great question. So, independent. So I'm lucky to have an athletic 16-year-old sophomore who's into 3 or more sports, and where I live in the Village Way complex, we have a gym, a weight room where it's open 24/7. I would like to see more facilities like the Brookline Athletic Club in Hickey Square is what we used to call it back in the day. Reach out to more of the youth in the town and allow them to use the facilities, obviously with a parent waiver or whatnot. But so more outreach from the facilities that we have that the youth can attend. I'd love to see an outdoor skating park for youth. We have a bunch of skateboarders. We have a club of them here in Brookline, and especially over here in Brookline Village. And they're using garages to go down. It's not safe. So I spoke with Erin Galentine from DPW, and we that conversation on where a skate park could go, who's going to donate that land for a skate park for these kids. So I would like to tackle that again, and bring that up again for the youth over here. I'm gonna move it along so others can.
Thank you, Donnell. Great,
you.
Zoe.
Staying on the theme of safety for roads and streets, then I guess there's probably a lot of areas of safety that could have been meant by that question, but I'll respond in the same way as the other folks. This is really connected to a lot of things. It's connected to access, it's connected to safety, it's connected to our hitting our climate mitigation targets. In 2019, we put a big team together, a community team and a staff team, they delivered what's called Warrant Article 31. It was about sustainable, equitable, and healthy and inclusive transportation. And it took seniors' voices, it took people that cared about EV infrastructure, and started painting a vision on how we could have really safe and inclusive streets where people could go out and be on a bicycle regardless of your age. And I know we were talking about kids here, but we want to design for everybody, and regardless of your age or your gender or your any other of the many diversity characteristics that we bring to the table. And that warrant passed. We brought it through a community process that I've described a lot, and we brought it through it with staff feedback and the select board weighing in, and then town meeting weighing in. And that painted a vision that the transportation board uses often to help shape how we do what's called complete streets, really inclusive, safe places for everyone. Now that's the roadways. Another topic is other forms of safety, but I think we'll end there for now.
Thank you. Nancy and Bernard, you got extra time on the last question. Is there anything you really want to say on this one?
I just very, very quickly say that the CPA, Community Preservation Act, is on the ballot on May 4th. I urge people to vote for it because that will give us plenty of money to improve, expand open space and parklands that will make it much easier for kids to be out in the streets and in the parking area. So that's my one plug.
Great. Nancy, are you okay on this one? Or?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Been a supporter of the CPA. Wish we had it before. We're going to get it now, I hope, and we will be able to make a lot of improvements. And complete streets is an important concept. We're not always able to do it that as well as we would like, especially on our narrower streets, of which this is New England after all, and we're stuck to all kind of patterns. And unless we rip down houses and widen the sidewalk, I don't think it's going to happen. But we do have wide enough streets that we can make it happen in many places.
Great. Okay, another school one I really want to get to. As many people know, the town school partnership is the sort of budgetary split between the town side and the school side every year. A certain percentage goes to the schools. Would you revise the town school partnership? And if so, what changes would you make to it? Bernard, do you want to start on that one? I'm going to go this way this time.
Okay, very, very briefly. We have made adjustments to the town school partnership to take into consideration the fact that the schools are under unusual and increasing amounts of pressure because of COVID and other things, as well as just, to take into account the fact that in Massachusetts, we have a structural deficit by design in all cities and towns, and that's Proposition 2.5. So, how we sort of juggle the money, the limited funds that we have between the town and school through the town school partnership is very difficult, but I think we're doing a very good job. I'll say that the new American Recovery or Rescue Plan Act is going to give us a huge amount of money. However, we shouldn't be spending it until we find out when it's coming in, what is the schedule of disbursements, as well as what are the rules and restrictions on the use of this money. But money coming to Brookline is about $34.2 million, but also the county of Norfolk County, which we usually disparage in Brookline, is going to get a big chunk of money also. And I'm working with the county commissioners to try to make sure that they understand our needs, and so that we can use a chunk of that for some of our really critical needs, particularly those caused by COVID. So, thank you,
Nancy, on that one.
Well, Bernard and I are both on the town school partnership now, and we're working we recognize that the schools have a lot of needs, especially because of COVID really made a lot of pressures. We were able to use the CARES Act, and the schools got funding from the CARES Act, but it hasn't been enough. And we have made adjustments to the school budgets based on the need. And we talk about it and think about it and try to act on it as well. I was on the town school partnership 20 years ago when it started. And so I know that it is different now, but I think it's important to have some sort of a formula or a framework for the division of revenue in the town. And before we had that, and I was there during that time as well, there was so much contention about it and disagreement. And I think the fact that we now have a much more level playing field in terms of how we divide the money is very important. And we can make adjustments, and we have made adjustments. We've known that the schools have greater needs this year and sometimes in the past as well. So we've made those adjustments, but I do think that having this overall framework is important.
If I may add, your audience may be interested in knowing that we are going to have a town school partnership meeting later on this week, so they should look out for that. Tune in if they're really interested, and give us any ideas that they have after watching.
Great, thank you, Donnell.
All right, thank you. I'll be brief. So the school town partnership has been around since something like 1985, when Marty Rosendahl was involved with it, and Stanley Spiegel and the whole nine. I'm going to be brief because I agree with what Bernard just said. The more to tune into those discussions, to those meetings. You know, now that we have Zoom, we should take more advantage of this discussion so everyone's heard. So more outreach, and asking people to tune in, so their voices are heard when the money comes in. So everyone has a say on where it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you. So I'm going to freely admit that I had a vague idea of what the town school partnership was until I ran for select board. And actually, I have to say, one of the joys of running for select board is I've been meeting with people, and I just have the opportunity to learn so much more in depth about what happens in the town. So I will say I tried to really dig into the formula for the town school partnership, and it's really opaque. And so what I would say is, yes, it needs to be modernized. It needs to be made more transparent and flexible so that it stays continually relevant. And I think that's a really important part of it. I think I should be able to really see what it is and explain it to others. And even sitting down with members of the school committee, I had a really hard time understanding it. And I think I'm, okay, smart. So yes, absolutely. I think it needs to be revised. I think it needs to be modernized, transparent, and flexible.
Zoe.
Okay, so the town school partnership is super important. It's alive and well inside town hall, and it has some major problems. The problems are that there's no serious and proactive collaboration between the school committee and the select board to solve this, with priorities coming from both committees and then those priorities being aligned. Staff feel this all the time, and we get pinched when I was staff on how you manage this. It needs to reflect yearly changes and be flexible, as Miriam said. And it needs to be updated, but it needs to be updated with proactive collaboration with the select board and the school committee. I want to go back. It needs to reflect, it has to be prioritized. Our budget needs to reflect the values of what we're trying to accomplish, or the priorities we're trying to accomplish that year. And that doesn't happen right now. And that's a big gap on addressing this, because it's part of the priorities we need to set. So one other thing, I think Miriam's right, it needs to be updated and looked at yeah. And then I wanted to comment, though, a lot of people commented on the money that we're getting. That's a Band-Aid solution to deal with COVID. It does not address the structural deficit that we have. And it's going to go to the counties. It hasn't been released to this town government. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's in response to the public health emergency. That's one space that the Treasury said we can put that money. It's another spot is on premium pay to eligible workers, revenue replacement, and investments, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. It's very specific on where that money can go. And it's not even designated to us. The MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association, has been working to try to get it so that towns get it and we don't get left out, because most of the country works on a county structure. But yeah, and it's also a Band-Aid solution. It's for COVID, fixing the COVID problems. It's not for our structural deficit.
Got it. Thank you. So we only have like 5 minutes left and my brain is starting to shut down, but I'm troubled because I've left out several questions about racism, about systemic racism, about environmental racism, about racial and economic justice. I know that you guys have a forum tomorrow night that's specifically about racial justice and those issues, but I'd like to just read a couple of the questions that came in and then offer you the chance to, as you do your closing statements, maybe you could at least incorporate something about racial justice and social justice as you close out, if you choose. So the one question is, how does environmental racism show up in Brookline specifically? And what are specific policies and proposals you would bring forth as a select board member to address environmental racism in town? Another is, how will you address systemic racism in ways that help us move forward? And there was also a police question, which is the select board or the town's police commissioners. What assurances can you give the voters that you will provide proper civilian oversight of the police? So again, I think there will be more room to answer these questions tomorrow night, but I'm just acknowledging that we didn't get to them enough. And if you want to incorporate them in your closing statement in some way, that would be great. And let's start. Donnell, can you go first? So about try to keep it. You've been so great at being brief. Like try to keep it to about a minute or so as you a minute or two as you wrap up.
Yes. All right. So I'll be brief. Please vote first and foremost for me in May 4th. So I grew up in a church called 12 Baptist Church. Okay, it's a historical church, old church. Actually, Kim Janey's actually a member of that church. And we were taught to always speak up. Don't worry about it. You know, speak up, and don't worry about the consequences, because there shouldn't be any if it's good intent. So I will keep that promise to speak up and use that executive power for real action to really help the folks in town who are asking for our help and haven't been heard. It's been going on for way too long, and it's frustrating it's frustrating to know the folks who have that executive power to help folks just aren't doing it. So I you know what? I'm tired of singing "We Shall Overcome Someday." I am tired of singing that song, and I will promise to everyone that I will do what is right for everyone in town. Please vote for me May 4th. Thank you. 857-243-3602 if you want to talk to me. Thank you.
That is access. Zoe, please wrap up.
Thank you for hosting these. I think we touched on some important issues, but there's so much left untouched. And so I hope folks reach out and join the different campaign events for all the candidates and really learn what's being said. I think that this is a snapshot of what's happening, and there's a lot more going on. I think everyone shares their website pretty profusely. So that's point one. I hope to see you in some conversations that we're having and hear your thoughts and views on some of these issues. On the environmental racism piece, I think this is a really interesting question. One, I think we have local spaces where that we can address vulnerable populations and equity related issues, but we have to do it in step with our very thoughtful and strategic planning, so our budget aligns and allows us to move revenue into those spaces. If every time we hit these gaps where we are saying, well, our values don't match, it's because we run into the fact that we're not prioritizing what we want to do. And this is super important for actually achieving ambitious goals. Our budget should align with our values. It should align with priorities that we set as a community. And so that's one space. Let's move, if we want to move money over, we can do it, but we need to get in line with each other and start stepping in the same direction to make this happen. But the other space we have a lot of influence on, the environmental racism space, is Brookline has opportunity to model good environmental behaviors. And environmental racism is always downstream. It's not that it doesn't impact in your neighborhood. It doesn't impact you in your neighborhood, but it impacts you significantly downstream. So Cancer Alley is in Louisiana, and where petroleum is refined and modified, that is all happening with the way we procure goods and services, the way we transport them, the way we deal with our energy use. And if we don't deal with the way we use energy here, it impacts people in other places. And that is environmental racism. And we're not talking little impacts. We're talking early death. We're talking asthma. We're talking cancer, awful things that happen where we pollute where minority populations are. That's a very serious issue. Brookline has a responsibility to lead and help us move away from that type of downstream dumping. There's so much more. I hope to see everybody at this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. You're absolutely right. This is just a snapshot. It's scratching the surface of all the issues that could be discussed. And Nancy, final words.
Thank you. So I'll just touch on the environmental issue, the racism issue for a minute, or less than a minute, 20 seconds. So we've done, as part of the Climate Action Committee, and part of our Climate Action Plan, we did a vulnerability study through MAPC, which is a regional planning group. And we've recognized that there are vulnerable populations and things like heat island effect, which is where you have a space that's just paved over and there's nothing to cool it down and nothing to protect it. And that's a danger to many people, and especially to people, seniors and vulnerable people, people who have asthma, people who are in situations where they may not be able to get out and go to a place that's cooler, because heat is going to really be a problem in the future. So I'm also working with the urban master plan. We received a grant, and it's an urban master plan, climate focused grant. And we're assessing the urban forest, is what we call it in Brookline, the canopy. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of canopy, especially in North Brookline. So we're going to be wrapping this study up soon, and we'll be talking about some of the recommendations for how we can deal with this issue. And I believe that it affects environmental racism. I can go on about the climate issue because it's of deep interest to me, but I'll end by saying I do have a website, and please go to it, hellerforselectboard.com. And I do hope you'll vote to return me to the select board. I have really enjoyed my time, and I really have a lot more to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Bernard.
Thank you. In my opening statement, I emphasize my experience, 16 years in town government, which really gives you an understanding or an ability to develop an understanding of the complexity of a town like Brookline. I mean, it's not just, the parks and the schools and things like that. It's everything from sewer systems to policing and IT, et cetera. And all those things have to be juggled by a select board member in order to make sure that we function smoothly and efficiently. For example, an example I'd like to use in order to respond to one of the questions that came in is my pulling together two policing committees, one the Task Force on Reimagining Policing and the other the Select Board Committee on Policing Reforms that I chaired. Those two groups really had different approaches to the problem of policing here in Brookline. And I used that in order to have some what I call creative tension in the discussion, so that we could really challenge each other's thinking and come up with good solutions. And one good solution that is responsive to the question that you asked is my committee put together and the select board adopted a proposal called the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee. And what this committee will do is to assist the board in their role as civilian control of the police. I mean, it's the select board that has civilian oversight and control of the police department. And what the PCAC, as we call it, enables us to do is to have additional support to do the types of review of policies and procedures, making recommendations to the select board, and a host of other things that make real the fact that as police commissioners, we are the civilian oversight of the police department. So, that's one thing I'd like to sort of end by, thanking everyone who attended, both the candidates as well as the audience. And I urge you to go to my website, and I asked them to make it simple so that I could remember it. It is Bernard Green, my name.com, bernardgreen.com for information on my campaign and the people who support me. Thank you.
Thank you. Miriam.
Thank you. So in my professional life, I'm the program director for the Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability Project at the Harvard Kennedy School. So this is actually my professional space. And what I will say is I'm not going to try to answer those questions now. There's just too much.
Yeah.
So what I would encourage you to do is go show up tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity Candidates Forum, where we'll really be able to dig into these really important, vital questions for this town, frankly, for our country. Instead, I'm going to use my last few minutes to send you to my website, which is miriamforbrookline.com. And I want to let you know, first, I want to thank you all for sticking it out, and for still being here. And I want to say that I have the skills to help Brookline develop and execute a strategic plan with a lens on equity, good governance, and inclusivity. And, I want to take my progressive politics and take my passion for Brookline and help them to work for all of us in Brookline. So I encourage you to check out my website. I have a detailed issues and policy page. You can get a lawn sign, you can donate. You can email me and issues. I have been responding and emailing back and forth with several people who we've had really interesting conversations. And I would love to hear from you. Most importantly, I would love you to vote on May 4th. For me, for anybody, just vote. Get out there and exercise your right to vote.
Thank you. I want to throw in one last fact that just came in from Mike Sandman, the chair of the advisory committee. He said the split between the schools and the town in the town school partnership formula has just been adjusted from 50-50 to what I think he means is 60-40. So to be continued on that. I really want to thank all of you for your civic energy and service and willingness to serve and hearts and minds. And you make me happier to live in Brookline, which is the toxicity aside, that you guys represent the positive side of things, which far outweighs all of the negative. I want to throw it back to Lauren and Ben from the Brookline Parents Organization. And I just want to thank all of you for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to echo Carrie's expression of gratitude. Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your evening with us. I know there have been a number of events today, and I can imagine that all of you are pretty tired, and thank you. In conclusion, I just want to mention a couple of things. In addition to the races, the select board race, the moderator race, the other town meeting races, school committee race, there are 2 ballot questions that are going to be posed to voters. We didn't really have time to go through them, but I'm going to mention them. The first one is a ballot question. I mean, I don't know which one is 1 and which is 2, but is whether the position of town clerk should remain an elected position or should it become an appointed position?
That's number 1.
It's number 1. Thank you. Truthfully, I have searched for a lot of good information on this. We debated it as town meeting members, but I haven't found anything satisfactory other than stay tuned to look for letters of from both sides of this issue, because there are 2 sides. There is clearly people in both camps, in the tab, in the patch, perhaps the globe, and stay tuned for those sorts of conversations. And if there is some kind of forum or debate on it, Ben and I will send a letter around. The second question is what Nancy and Bernard have already touched on, which is the Community Preservation Act. I don't know of a no campaign, but there are 2 websites where you can get more information. One of them is communitypreservation.org, and it also lists the communities before Brookline that have adopted it. And the second is brooklinecommunityact.org, which is encouraging people to vote for it. And on May 4th, these questions will be at the top of the ballot, along with the races that we have, for whom we've had candidates this evening, as well as school committee, town meeting member races and everything. Lots to think about. Thank you all for joining, all of the people who've participated, all of the viewers. Again, any questions after the forum tonight, feel free to email Ben and me at frog in my throat, info@brooklineparents.org. And we do our best to respond to everybody. Thank you again. Ben, I don't know if you have a few last words. If not, thank you and good evening. And Ben, if you want to chime in, please go ahead. Otherwise,
I'll just chime in to say I don't have anything to say except thank you again to everybody. Thank you so much to Carrie for moderating. Thank you to all of the candidates for taking their time. Thank you for running, for dedicating your time to our town, or for wanting to dedicate more time to our town. We know that these are really huge time commitments, and I think I speak for a lot of folks when I say thank you for doing that, and also thank you for bringing your voices to like a contested election and having the debate and putting these issues out there. I think that discussing issues civilly and positively and is hugely important to any kind of democracy. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Welcome.
Good night.
Night,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you, Carrie.